Thursday, November 21st. Welcome back to the Damon Bruce Show, brought to you by Ike's Sandwiches. It is fantastic having you here today. And let me tell you right now, I don't know what you're doing for lunch this afternoon, but look at this. Doesn't that look good to you? Doesn't that look absolutely delicious? And like this show, I never said it's going to be good for you. I just said you're going to like it. That's a big calorie count. I get it. Everything about my life has been a big calorie count. You'll be happy that you put all those calories in your mouth when you eat at Ike's this afternoon. Download that Ike's Rewards app. Make sure that you start winning your way towards free sandwiches, free chips, free drinks. Get it all at Ike's. My man is the primary sponsor of everything we do over here. Of course, thanks so much to the Dubliner. Great sponsors. I don't know where you're watching 49ers Packers this weekend, where you're going to watch Steelers Browns, where you might be going to watch your next Warriors game. Get yourself to the Dubliner in West Portal. They'll be very happy to see you. You will fit right in. You're going to love the Dubliner. It is a Bay Area classic. And speaking of which, do I have one of those for you? You can see I'm wearing the headphones. That means we're about to talk to somebody. Who might that someone be? Well, I'll tell you, the amount of talent that used to be in Bay Area radio, it's a long list. We're not going to start this conversation there. We'll more end it there. But when I think about all the talent that used to be on 95.7 The Game back in the day, one of the first guys I think about is this guy right here, Mr. John Middlekauff, who we got to know locally, and now the entire nation is getting to know through his work on the 3 and Out podcast, on the Volume Network. Your ride-alongs with Colin Cowherd are always outstanding. John, I'm so happy for you. You're blowing up, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. No wonder KNBR can't afford Tom. You took all their sponsors.
Yeah. It's look at it this way. If you're a sponsor not going to the podcast space and not going to the YouTube space and going to the radio space, like, just good luck with that. Good luck with that. It's not the way the entire world is marching. It is really good to see you, Middlekauff. First of all, tell us how the Volume is doing. Your 3 and Out podcast is, I think, a must listen to after an NFL weekend. Nobody just gets into the minutia of how teams are built, how teams fall apart, how they're put back together. I think better than you, man. You really do see the Matrix so well.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, just, I kind of approach my podcast now like a daily radio show, do it, kind of 6 days a week, I guess, and the thing I do with Colin. So just watch a lot of football, talk a lot of football, just hang out, try to have a good time. It's funny is, as radio dies and podcasts, it's essentially the same thing, right? I mean, it's just people in your ear and now people in your car because you can connect. And I've been listening to sports talk since I was, I remember being in 7th or 8th grade when Jim Rome was really blowing up in the late 90s and sneaking in that yellow Walkman, and a couple other guys that, I ended up playing high school football with, which were the same. And, I just love talking sports. And, I think over time, when I started getting into radio, I really wanted to kind of broaden my horizons and talk everything. And then I realized, like, as I've gotten more into podcasting, I mean, luckily, and Guy used to always tell me this, like, who cares if you're pigeonholed with football? And, I don't really watch as much of the other sports. I mean, I love golf, and that's kind of my passion project. And through digital stuff, I'm able to do stuff, but it's basically just a lot of football, which is, it's,
what's your golf?
I think what makes that sport unique is it really just takes up your Saturday and Sunday, where the other, if you're really following baseball, I mean, it takes a lot every night. Even the NBA, you got to watch a lot of kind of worthless games on a Tuesday or a Thursday that don't mean that much. And that's kind of where football, I think, is really separated, right? Because every game feels massive and shit. I mean, look at you, your Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, that's going to be, how many people do you think are going to watch, especially if the game's closed? 10+ million people on Saturday morning?
It's going to be absolutely huge. And the only thing that's wrong with it is that big noon kickoff is a time slot that nobody really likes. Nobody likes a game getting underway at noon.
It does suck, but it does, like, for the Big Ten specifically, it has helped them. I mean, it's their ratings for that slot because they don't compete against anyone. I do. If I'm an Ohio State fan, it's like, we have to play this. You guys are riding us like we're the Yankees or the Lakers here. Can we get one night game where the SEC is, with the TV deals? Now they get all. I feel like every time Saturday night you turn on a big SEC games at night, and the Big Ten's already done for the day.
Totally. They definitely start the conversation with themselves when they get that early kickoff. And I'm telling you, man, I'll give my Hoosiers a puncher's chance, John. I really will. They're not an illusion. They're playing really good football.
They've blown out everybody except Michigan all season long, right?
Yeah, no, they're a really, really good operation, man. Cignetti can coach, and we could spend the rest of the show just talking about that. But
I think we'll know early. I think you'll know like 6-7 minutes in the game. It's like
100%.
okay, speed, physically.
Right.
It is either going to be like 14-0 at the end of the first half, or like 3-0. You're like, okay, we can win this thing.
Right. Give me 2 drives. I'll tell you how this game is going to go after I see 2 drives from both teams. How's the defense look? How's the offense look? And look, man, I whenever I would drive in, I told you how much I used to listen to you and Guy Haberman. One of my favorite shows ever in the Bay Area market was Haberkoff, and it's really good to have you back here. And man, I got some football questions for you, John. Let's just hop right in with a topic that everybody in Northern California obviously is just, panicking about. Even when it's good, 49er fans are panicking. So now there's an awful lot of anxiety out there in the air. Why do you think the 49ers are pointed in the wrong direction at this point in this season?
Well, I mean, I think Bosa said it yesterday that we're a couple plays away from being 8-2, and he's not wrong, right? They were in control of 3 divisional games. Right. To me, the Kansas City game, you can say, was that the game Debo got sick and they had some injuries and weird things happen. I thought they kind of got worked in that game, but whatever. Like you lost to the Chiefs. Who cares?
That happens.
You had a double-digit lead against the Rams. You had a double-digit lead against the Arizona Cardinals, who were not playing as well at the time as they're playing now. And that you just can't lose to Seattle when absolutely owned them, right, in Geno's career. And we're even owning them kind of in that game. I mean, that pick he threw across his body. And to lose those 3 games, I think are pretty devastating. Now, part of it is like it's just been a lot's been going on. I mean, Ayuk from the holdout to his leg getting shattered to even that Seattle game. It's hard. They have older players. So when you see the injury report, you're like, this guy didn't practice. This guy didn't practice. You're like, whatever, they're going to play. And most of the time. But all of a sudden, Schefter tweets out on Saturday night or Sunday morning, Kittle's out. You're like, what? He just had one of the best games of the season. Like that was a pretty big moment. I thought, like, what?
It feels like the 49ers lead the league in Guy has good game last week. There's no sense of him being injured at all. And then on Wednesday, the following week, you find out, he might not be ready to go. It's crazy.
It's rare to have like Bosa. You can see he's in a lot of pain.
Right.
And he's doing your classic football. He's trying to play through it. When he has to tap out of the game, like I can't even imagine the splintering pain going through the side of his body. But like the Kittle thing has kind of, that to me symbolizes a lot of this season of like, you never really know what you're going to get. Like he just looked like one of the best players in the NFL the week before. And now he has a hurt hamstring and he can't go and still kind of in question this week. Clearly offensively, they just haven't been as potent. And I think everyone blamed because Christian was out. It's like, well, even early in the season when Ayuk was there, you still have Deebo Samuel, you have Kittle, you have Juwan Jennings. Mason through like 5 or 6 games was leading the league in rushing. Like I think that was kind of a BS excuse. Like let's just face it. Sometimes I'm sure we'll get into Kyle-Shanahan. You just you have a bad podcast. You have a bad game. Like Kyle's just had some rough moments.
Yeah,
and he ultimately is the orchestrator of this all, especially offensively. And they have been off. And listen, I put special teams on him, not because he's the special teams. He's the head coach.
Right.
And you get kind of what you emphasize. And I think clearly we know he does not care. I don't blame him for Jake Moody getting injured. Nothing you can do when your kicker gets injured in a game. But the constant coverage and this isn't a one-off 2024 issue. This has been going on for 6 or 7 years. And I just think like they've invested. They drafted a kicker high. Whether it works out or not, only time will tell. They drafted a punter high. He's been pretty Mitch when he's healthy. He's injured as well. But when he's healthy, like fine. But the coverage stuff is like you guys emphasize breaking tackles on offense and tackling on defense. Like how do you not emphasize this stuff in practice?
Yeah. I mean, all of the special teams problems, not one of them, as far as I'm concerned, has anything to do with a kicked football.
No,
it's all kick and punt coverage and stay in your lane and stuff that JV coaches used to yell at you on high school practice fields on how to cover punts. It's a little nuts. And I do think for a guy who is, wrapped up in the details of everything, it's amazing how he has just let special teams be a detail that he is unconcerned with when it has come back to bite him so often throughout this year. You brought up Jordan Mason. And it's not like you go to a Broadway play and you find out the understudy's there and it's like, this isn't going to be nearly as good as it was. Now, Jordan Mason isn't Christian McCaffrey, obviously. No one else is. No one catches the ball out of the backfield like he does. But Mason was leading the NFL in rushing
He was
just
fine.
a handful of weeks ago. And since McCaffrey has returned, has carried the ball 3 times over 2 weeks. Isaac Guerrero, who they drafted and had a good October after a rocky start, he's had 1 carry in the month of November. You know, there's so much noise and anxiety around Kyle Shanahan, and a lot of it is false criticism and just pearl clutching, and it's ridiculous. Like, if the 49ers want to get rid of Kyle Shanahan, I will drive him to Chicago to coach the Bears myself tomorrow. Like, I dare you to fire.
How many teams? How many teams do you think would be interested? 25?
Oh, the line would be anyone who's looking for a head coach in the NFL. There'd be 9 franchises trying to get to Kyle Shanahan.
Well, teams would. The Eagles would fire Sirianni yesterday and hire Kyle Shanahan. Right?
That's something right there.
Beside all the good teams, like obviously the Harbaugh brothers aren't going anywhere. Andy's not going anywhere. Dan Campbell's in a pretty good spot.
Right.
You know,
think Robert Kraft might not be interested?
I mean, I can't even. The list would be long, and the amount of he would immediately become the highest paid coach in the NFL because just supply demand and the multiple teams going after him. Again, it's a pointless conversation because in no world are you firing Kyle Shanahan.
Exactly.
When I worked for Andy Reid, it was at the tail end of his Eagles stuff, but he had some up and down seasons. And looking back, like Andy, I know the Eagles won a Super Bowl with Doug, but they've ran through 3 different coaches. And if Sirianni loses in the playoffs, he'll probably be gone. They'll be on their 4th. Andy Reid's just cruising along. And I'm not saying their personalities are different. I think Andy's a little more true West Coast, lighter guy. Maybe Kyle will lighten up as he gets a little older. But both can be stubborn, both offensive guys. And I think the one thing back to the special teams, because when I was with Andy, like special teams was a problem too. I think, with LaFleur and McVay, special teams have been an issue. I think defensive guys put more of an emphasis on it. Like obviously Belichick way back in the day coached it, but Tomlin and Jim Harbaugh, who's an offensive guy, but really he's more like a middle
John
linebacker.
Harbaugh, he was a special teams coach, right?
They're wired like defensive guys tackling. It's a big deal where the offensive guys are just worried about plays and designs, and they're great at it. But, to me, this is where like whoever the best, like if this dude at the Saints, who's now their interim coach, Riz, who's been one of the better special teams coaches, it's kind of nerdy football stuff, the best special teams coach. But you just like, what's your going rate? $1.5 million instead of paying, because it's not like the Niners special teams coach makes $50K. He's probably making $800,000. It's just not working. So you just overpay to get a guy. You don't even need to think about it. The Andy's guy was a longtime guy for the Chicago Bears, Dave Tobe.
Yeah.
Back in their heyday with the Urlacher Briggs days, they were awesome on special teams with Hester, but it wasn't even just returns. It was the whole operation. And he's like, we'll just get the best guy, and I don't even have to think about it, and you just run it like I do when I hire Fangio to run my defense or something.
Right.
And I think
dude, special teams and Robbie Gould used to be the best chance the Bears had to score today back in those days.
Yeah.
They really did. So, to bring it back to Shanahan, though, and all the false criticism that falls on him by just bad content creators who know that they're going to get a lot of clicks by screaming about Shanahan. What, to me, does kind of drive me nuts about the guy, who is a brilliant head coach and I think is great at designing plays and calling plays. And,
he's won 8 playoff games.
Right. I mean, look, Debo and company may have all gotten old at the same time. There's a part of that that's in here. But what does drive me nuts about him is how he has Jordan Mason and Christian McCaffrey, and it's all of one and none of the other. Hasn't he ever seen like old wishbone footage? You can have 2 running backs on the field at the same time, especially a guy that you can flex out. It drives me nuts that McCaffrey and Mason haven't hit the field together at some point, especially with the offensive struggles that they've been having over the last couple of weeks.
But it was like that last year where they would have, I mean, obviously they were a way better team last year. They would be in these games where they were in complete control in the second half, and he's still riding McCaffrey like carries in the mid-20s. It's like, why? It was clear Mason, I didn't know he was this good, but it was clear he was an NFL player, handing the ball sometimes.
Yeah.
Like Kyle's the Tom Thibodeau of the NFL. It's like, I'm only playing my guy. It's like, Kyle, this guy just almost missed half the season with an injury that even Christian's like, yeah, don't really know what it is. Clearly not good. And it's like, can we just, you have another guy who's really good. And honestly, like you said, Guerrero, the rookie, he's kind of unique because of the high-end speed. So if he just breaks a run, maybe you get, I don't know, an explosive play that's been a struggle for the offense. So he gets very weird with his running back position. Once you're just, and he was like this with Mason. Once you're just the starter, you just get all the carries, which is kind of unheard of in 2000, I would say 24, even the last like 4 or 5 years with running. Watch the Eagles with Saquon. They ride Saquon, but all of a sudden they'll just have their other guys in there taking carries.
Right, you see Gainwell get a carry
all the time. Yeah, he'll just get like a series after like 4 Saquon series. I don't know, to give the guy a breather. You take a beating, and Christian. Listen, he's got a lot of tread on those tires. A lot of Stanford carries, a lot of time in Carolina, and the injury stuff. Wouldn't you just want to? I don't know, just take it a little easy, but that's Kyle's shown now. That's not the way he rolls.
No, it's definitely not. Look, you roll in a way where you talk to an awful lot of behind the scenes people. You are dialed in an NFL way that a lot of content creators aren't. You are, you know, former scouts, you have a network of information, and you know how teams are studied and what a copycat league the NFL has always truly been. Has Shanahan, John, been so studied? Has his running game been so thoroughly poured over in every single NFL, headquarters, that the league has learned so much about how Kyle goes about his operation that they're onto his tendencies a little bit now? Has he been overstudied, and is that what has closed the gap between the rest of the NFC and the 49ers?
Well, I think he is, when you watch McVay, now granted, he's got Stafford, even this older version, when he's on, you can just ride him for 45 pass attempts in a game, right? I would say he's the one old guy in the league who can just play with like the top 5 guys, Mahomes, right. Allen, Burrow, Lamar, Herbert, kind of that crew. Like Stafford immediately can play like them on, definitely a one-off basis.
I don't know how old Stafford is, but his arm is still 26.
Yeah, and he has games where like, is this the best quarterback in the NFL? And McVay likes to pass it a little bit more. And Kyle really is a much more of a throwback like his dad and most of the coordinators from the 80s and the 90s that will run it constantly. And I had Jay Gruden on probably like 2 months ago, and he was saying, listen, Kyle's run game scheme is incredible. And when it works, the pass game off that is kind of stealing, right? All the boots and stuff. There was a play in that Seattle game. They didn't run as many that they basically booted Purdy on like a play action, and the defender was right there. How often now when they move Purdy off the play action fake and he goes the other way, does the defender sit right there? They're not biting as much. And one thing Jay said is like, listen, all the coaches, everyone studying that game offensively and defensively, his run game. But like when it comes to just his drop back passing game, it's not viewed very highly because he doesn't really have one. It's all tied to the run. So if he doesn't just destroy you on the ground, which a lot of his successful seasons, that's what he's done. And obviously last year with McCaffrey being like an MVP player, it throws off his passing game because he's not, I don't know if it's necessarily the design of his offense, if it's his comfortability calling the plays. Like in a perfect world, Andy Reid will spread you out and throw it 50 times. But like this year's a good example. Really the last couple, right? They don't have the personnel. So he's like, listen, I just got to ride Pacheco and now I got to ride. Andy has just turned in, I'll do whatever it takes to win.
Right. And he's also got a defense that he can lean on. I mean, like
exactly. But even Kyle, like his defense, it's not as good as it has been, but it's still relative to the NFL pretty good. Like just sometimes you got to play different. And for the most part, Kyle just plays like he plays. Right.
Right.
And his run game's a huge part of it. And he's
that
like
ego? There's no way the guy doesn't.
I just think he's mastered it. I think when you master something, you just like playing the hits because you think you can call the right play at the right time. And I think these teams now have seen so much of it. And listen, I don't pretend to know like as much scheme as he does, but I do think there's got to be some balance. The other thing is, let's face it, if you are going to be willing to pay a quarterback $50+ million a year, like you better be willing to ride his arm. Because if you're not, then it's not going to be a good enough investment.
Right. It's like when you sign Brandon Ayuk for $30 million, you better target him like a $30 million a year.
But like that's a good example. And they were in a weird spot. If they could have that back,
I think
it's fair to say they just would have traded him, but like before the draft.
100%. Yeah.
And I think they tried to have the cake and eat it too. They're like, well, we might trade him before the draft and we get like the 15th pick. It's like, no, you're not getting that. If they could do it over again, they would have traded him for like a 2 and a 3 before the draft. right?
Yeah.
So they could have picked players and done
I mean, it would have
whatever.
been great value. At that point, everyone would have been like, oh, you didn't get enough. Looking at what other guys have been traded for since the season's begun, that would have been fantastic.
And the money that you allocated toward him, like you just realize, again, he's a good player. My issue with that whole situation, they were in a tough spot because he's a good player. He's a winning player. But in this offense, he was never going to be Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson catching 120 balls,
right?
Or even the way the Eagles ride their two guys. So, like, does it make sense to pay this much money for a guy who max is going to catch 80 balls a year? It's like, well, it's Yak. It's like, okay, great. But his production is his production.
Right.
Where McCaffrey's value is really high, or even Trent's, because you're going to run the ball all the time. But Ayuk, I mean, Juwan Jennings is 2 years, $15 million. It's just
one of the best deals in football, based on what he's playing.
Debo just looking kind of slow hurts them.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. I mean, he's I mean, when he was rolling, you're like, well, I got this guy who can basically I can run tunnel screens too nonstop. He can catch all these short intermediate routes. And then if my running back gets hurt, he can basically just be my running back and carry the ball 7 to 10 times and
Not
be
anymore.
a really good running back. And now you're watching him, you're like, God, maybe it's his hamstring, but he looks kind of slow, which is a problem. And like you mentioned earlier, if it is true, he's just old, which happens in football, or the tread is finally caught up on his tires. It's a problem, and that means they're probably not going to make the playoffs. Yeah. I mean, I think we'll know in these next 2 weeks. I would say at minimum they have to split them to be 6-6 and give themselves a chance. If they lose them both, it's 100% game over.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of Tampa, I said, so the next 3 games are a must win followed by a must split. They lost the must win. That makes the must split,
You could argue this is must win because, like, are they going to go on the road to beat Buffalo?
No, just based on what we're seeing. I think
they might have lost that game if this season was last year and they were 13-4. That probably would have been one of their losses, which is like, whatever.
Yeah. Look at it this way.
When are you ever going to have to go on the road to Buffalo? Not in the playoffs.
Any team that can beat Kansas City in their own stadium is a game that you should worry about. So there you go right there. What is a fair price for Brock Purdy? What is a fair price that allows him to get market value and get paid? He's absolutely given at the office with the starting salary point of his career. But what's a fair price that the team can still be functional around him if it were up to you to negotiate this deal for Parag Marathe? What's the number you would seek?
Well, I'm a big believer in, like, what's the rush? And, if last season had been his 3rd season, then you would have had to just pay the premium that was going. But it's like, this season's been a little rocky. So you're still under contract next year. And clearly, off the field now because he plays for the 49ers, he's making millions of dollars, right? For the cowboy boots, John Deere, and I'm sure local deal. Like, he's fine.
He's selling Toyota truck.
To pay, I think you see this. Like, Tua clearly is a really solid player, but he's not like no one. If you just did a draft from scratch, like, he's not going in the top 10. So when you pay that much money to somebody and you still have questions about him being, like, it just puts you in a weird spot. Now, I think Purdy has proven to be better than that over time, but they're still like, what's he going to look like this week in Lambeau if it's snowing, freezing cold, and you can't grip? Like, if he has an incredible last month and a half and leads them back and they win a playoff game, I'd be like, yeah, it is what it is. But if they go 8-9, do you just have to pay him next year, or can you let it go again? It's like, well, you're just going to pay more. Like, okay, I'm willing to do that. I'm not willing to do that at, like, other positions, but at quarterback, my whole franchise is somewhat determined about him once I sign a contract. Now the Niners have been more balanced. It hasn't been all on his, but once I give him, like, I would love to give him, like, 4 years, $120 million. I'd guarantee every penny, something like that. But that's not really the way it works. But if I'm going to pay the going rate of these enormous numbers, like, I don't think I'm just cutting that check after an 8-9 season when I got one more. I just let it ride again. I'm not acting like cutting them or I can do better, because we can tell it's pretty hard. But I'm just, let's pump the brakes. Let's just.
But I mean, his agent's job is to make sure that he doesn't agree to that, right? If you're Brock Purdy's agent, you don't let him back on the field on a 1-year deal.
Well, let's just say that. So they go, let's say 8-9, and they miss the playoffs, and they're drafting like 14th or 15th. Do you think he does an Ayuk and just nowhere to be found? Because I have a hard. I bet he would show up.
I think he will too. He's such a good soldier.
But it's not even a good shoulder. It's like, listen, there's a lot of money on the line. How often do quarterbacks, like the Ayuks, and I understand where they're coming from, because at any moment your leg could get shattered. How often do quarterbacks really get seriously injured? It's pretty rare. Yeah. I mean, hell, we just saw Kirk Cousins tear his Achilles and get $100 million. Now, Cousins, you would say, has a longer resume and had less on the line. He'd already made a lot more money. So it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. In Purdy's game, I would say, unlike Cousins, is much more like his athleticism, like a lot of his success is tied to him moving around. If he couldn't move like Cousins, he wouldn't be nearly as good as he is. Do you agree with that? If he was just a statue in the pocket, like a Goff or Cousins, like he would not be a good player. His versatility makes him a dynamic player. So he, it is risky, but I would be hesitant to just hand out a $50+ million, because it's not even about the yearly. It's like, are you guaranteeing him $200 million? Like Nick Bosa is clearly one of the best players in the league when healthy. He got like 120. So you would give, and I get it, quarterback, be $80 million more guaranteed to Purdy. That seems pretty bold. Coming off like an 8-win season where it's like, just had some moments against better teams. The other thing is, like, he's played some good teams, and he had some moments in the playoffs, but it was also not like just dominant performances. Like, you feel really good. That's where the top 5, even Lamar, he gets nitpicked, and rightfully so. But in the big game, sometimes he lets you down a little bit, but there's no disputing his physical gifts and his dominance. And obviously now Herbert with Harbaugh, you're like, holy shit, this guy looks like John Elway. Burrow, I mean, he's incredible. Mahomes' resume speaks for itself, and Josh Allen might be his best opportunity this year to win a Super Bowl. Like, those guys are just, you feel good about paying. Even if you're the Bengals and you end up winning 6 games, you're like, I'd pay Burrow. We got a discount on this player. Right. Where I just think that's the thing with Purdy in the class he's in is much more, the Dax and the Goff. Dak's a good example. Like, there's not that big of a difference between Dak and Goff. When Dak's on really good teams, he puts up sweet numbers. He's really good. When he's on a shitty team, he looks terrible. Goff's on a team that's absolutely stacked and is dominating. If you put Goff on the Jags, how do you think he'd look? Right. So it's, so if you put Purdy in, all of a sudden you got to purge the roster. Now, somehow the Niners suck at drafting high. They're pretty good at nailing like 3rd through 6th.
5th rounder all day long.
Yeah, so
look, good luck.
I just think it's a very, like, it's not complicated with certain players. Like, how much are you going to pay TJ Watt? Well, like, what's the going rate? We'll pay him. Right. What are the Bengals going to end up paying Jamar Chase? I don't know, a lot. I do think with certain guys, it should be a very, very difficult discussion. This is not the NBA. It's like max here, or max there, or max there. Like, this is a really big deal. It's also like, okay, Kyle, are you real? Like, you're not going to just, are you here for the next 5 years? Not that like he plans on but I'm just saying, like, we're all in this together now. I mean, you talk about really tying everyone together. If we give him a 5-year, $200 million contract.
Yeah, the two of them need to be together. I mean, if one stays, the other stays. That's for sure.
If I told you Kyle left tomorrow, Purdy's value to the Niners would change dramatically.
Of course it would. Absolutely it would.
Where that's the case, like Herbert, Burrow, their value's unchanged, right? If coach leave, coach comes, like, their value's their value. Right. Bosa's value is his value. Trent Williams' value is his value.
Purdy's,
that's where Debo's a unique player. It's like his value, even in his prime, was more valuable to Kyle than it was to a lot of other people.
Right. I mean, it feels like any starting quarterback who isn't on the verge of losing his job with 3 bad games in a row is a $35-40 million a year conversation. That is the absolute floor for Brock. Probably more 50 because it's San Francisco, and it's hard.
Well, he's won in the playoffs too. Like, he's
and he's big games. He's won big playoff games as well. So I think it's like a $50-55 million a year floor with a ceiling that could go to 65. I mean, it's
be the highest paid 7th rounder. Probably. I mean, how many 7th rounders will we ever see make that level of money ever again?
Probably none.
Very rare.
Yeah, probably none. He's probably about to get the single biggest year-over-year raise in the history of North American sports contracts. I mean, that's what he would kind of be looking at.
Probably in the history of the world. When non, like,
I don't know, there's some weird soccer things that always happen. I don't know about that.
That's true.
Are you ready to play a lightning round? Because I mean, I could talk Niners with you all day, but I got a few other things to get through in the NFL. Little lightning round. You ready to go?
Yeah.
Are the Raiders going to bring back Antonio Pierce for a second bite at the dysfunctional apple?
My gut tells me no, because Mark doesn't want to do it. But I have talked to so many people either in or around the NFL that thinks it's like a lock he's done. And look at their schedule. I don't know if they might not win again. So you win, even if they win 3 wins. I mean, it's a rough season. It's just this team looks way worse than last year. And I mean, part of the reason he got hired, right, was because they were competitive at the end. And really that Baltimore game, probably one of the all-time outliers, not just this season, but of the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, Baltimore plays that game 10 times. They were up 10 points in the fourth quarter and lost to the Raiders. It's crazy.
That is nuts. That is nuts. Joe Douglas, who just got fired by the Jets, I think he's a pretty damn good GM. I'd like to see him get a shot in a non-dysfunctional situation. Where does Joe Douglas resurface?
GMs usually only get one shot.
But this guy's
not a lot of guys get double. And the one thing I'm not defending Woody Johnson. Obviously, the guy's nuts.
Right.
But part of that story was he wanted to talk to him after the Denver game. I don't totally blame him. If I owned the team, I'd be like, "What? We just lost 10-9 to a rookie quarterback, and we got Aaron Rodgers." He not only drafted Zach Wilson, which was the guy's a third stringer. The reason Kyle and John got away with drafting Trey Lance and giving Purdy fell into their lap. If they had been in a similar situation, they would have been screwed too. And then he chased it with Aaron Rodgers, who, let's face it, a little like Russell Wilson to Denver, has just been an objective disaster and a fleecing from the Packers because they got rid of their problem, got to transition, and he's just like most, I would say, athletes our entire lives. When you hit 38, 39, 40, NBA, baseball, definitely football, you usually fall off a cliff.
You think that Aaron Rodgers resurfaces anywhere, or is he done this year after New York?
I think just it depends who the head coach and the GM is. I could see if you just take over the job at your classic, he's still under contract next year. If he wants, part of the reason these guys keep going, where else do you make $35-40 million in the real world? So I could see him come back for one more year to make the money. Also, maybe hopefully just not tarnish my legacy as bad. Maybe we have a decent season. I could see Rodgers being their quarterback or they'd have to cut him, because would anyone trade for a $35-40 million Aaron Rodgers right now?
Ben Johnson, OC in Detroit, Dan Lanning, head coach at Oregon, Deion Sanders, Colorado. Which one becomes an NFL head coach first?
Ben Johnson. I have a hard time seeing Dan Lanning. He's 38. It used to be you make more money in the NFL. What's Dan Lanning making? $10-11 million. If an NFL team wanted to give him 15, or Nike easily in Oregon easily could.
Right.
Who was the other guy you listed? Oh, Deion. Yeah, I could, I think that, are the Giants hiring Deion Sanders? No. I think the Cowboys and the Raiders, if they have the top pick and Shedeur Sanders, it does make a lot of sense. The easiest way to get everyone off Mark Davis's back or Jerry Jones' back, hire Deion Sanders, and kind of it just makes everyone happy for a moment. Would it work? I don't know. You could argue too, what he's doing in college. I think he just landed one of the top quarterbacks.
He did
today.
He did.
His skill of recruiting and everything. Spurrier. You've seen a lot of these guys. Bobby Bowden, these CEO, huge personalities. Now, Deion clearly knows defense, but his main skill being the brand, being the recruiter. To me, he's a little younger. He learned from Bobby Bowden. Show up in the limo. That's irrelevant in the NFL. Andy doesn't recruit anyway. I got 1 first-round pick. I got 1 second-round pick. We got $7 million in cap space. I guess I can kind of recruit you. Are you willing to pay, for $2 million? Because that's all the money we got. It's so different in the pros. It's why Kyle, in theory, big brain, scheming. It's all about scheme. The recruiting's irrelevant. So I don't know if Deion would actually work in the pros, but maybe he would.
Yeah, I don't know how many, other pros are going to be really excited that, Warren Sapp's on my coaching staff.
It's Pat Shurmur's his offensive coordinator. I remember Pat Shurmur being offensive coordinators for different teams, and the team couldn't wait to get him out of there.
Right. No one was that impressed with the Pat Shurmur experience. Which dysfunctional NFL situation do you actually think is the best of the dysfunctional situations? The Cowboys, we've got Jerry Jones always tinkering. the Jets, who, for a number of reasons are a mess, but also, have a considerable amount of talent actually on that roster, or the Cleveland Browns with the Deshaun Watson contract and situation just constantly hanging over them. Which of those situations is actually best?
I would put the Browns last because of the quarterback situation and that contract. I'd probably go Jets, Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys have won, 36 games over the last 3 years coming into this year. Jerry's shown an ability to draft. I think the Jets' problem is they do have some talent, but they got guys now that are going to be going into their third and fourth year. That's usually when guys get paid. So like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner have been cheap. Well, I mean, they view themselves as superstars. So it's like you start having to pay these guys. It changes the dynamics. I would say they're all pretty major red flags. If Jerry was just more like most owners, just didn't say anything, I do think the Cowboys would be a pretty good job. I do think it's hard to be a head coach when your owner talks all the time. And not just about like business, like he's talking so in depth on football. Which is probably, if you have a good relationship, is cool because he loves it and he knows it. Like he played at Arkansas, but it's got to be a lot. I mean, say this about Woody. Like, when's the last time Woody said a word? He speaks like once a year. I mean, Jerry's speaking every game and then every Tuesday. So even when you have good teams, it's just got to be a difficult proposition if you're trying to be the voice of the team when everyone knows that that's actually the voice of the team.
It's funny. I've known a lot of people who have worked with, for, around Colin Cowherd, and you're now one of them as well. My old roommate, Sam Batesh, was on his show. John Goulet, obviously. I've talked to them about their experiences working with, watching, this guy prepare and how it's changed their careers. What have you learned from Colin Cowherd and what is it like working with him?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say obviously helped change my life. I've gone to Fox a couple times, and early on, I don't even know if I was doing a podcast for him at the time.
You need to get back on that set now. You are Scottsdale, Arizona level tan. So if you're ever going to get back on that TV set, now's the time to do it, tan boy.
Played golf yesterday, and it was about 80 degrees here. And the show at Pacific Standard Time starts at 9. They start meeting at about 5:45 in the morning. So it's just, it's a very, very serious operation in terms of like time spent on it. So it's just like his work habits are pretty elite. And this is, by the time I'm doing this and, seeing him do this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, financially, the guy's set. His career's already been established and set. Like you just to keep grinding like that is, it's just you either have it or you don't. And obviously it comes down. I mean, what we get to do for a living, talk about sports is, pretty in terms of like the tough jobs in America, this has to rank pretty low in terms of actual physical difficulty. So it's like not complaining, but it does take a lot of time and he dedicates a lot of time to it. So it's, I would say have been one of the short list of figures in my life. Honestly, might be the only one that like, you grew up, I guess when I was in college is when he went to ESPN. I remember hearing him for the first time and, started listening to a show and I've never heard anything like it. And then to end up having a personal relationship with him, a professional relationship with him, has been a pretty special experience for sure.
You're going to use those, the incredible reach of the volume to get yourself a pass to Augusta for the upcoming Masters. I know you're a big golf guy.
Yeah. I've been working on that. Augusta's tough.
It's the hardest ticket to get in sports.
Yeah, it's one of those, I don't know if that really matters that much. You hear some stories. The thing with Augusta, I definitely would go, but it's one of those, which is probably cool. They don't allow you a phone. So from a content standpoint, it's basically zero.
Oh, content. Yeah, this would be a trip for Johnny. Not
just to enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those probably. I don't have many things on my bucket list in terms of sports. We've been lucky in the Bay Area from NBA Finals to World Series to Super Bowls to playoff games, like kind of seen it all. But that would be on the short list of things that honestly, there's not a long list of things in sports that I really want to experience. And that's probably number one.
I've always loved your perspective. You think like a scout because you were one. You think like a GM. You think like a front office guy. You look at things without emotion. You look at things from a business of football standpoint. Well, as a guy who understands about building and collecting talent and holding on to it, let me take you back to 2015 to like 18 at 95.7 the game. Listen to this talent that we had. John, look, everybody's gone their own way. Everyone's doing well, I guess. But if we could have kept this together, the game had you, a national level talent, Haberman, who is a national level talent, Fortenbaugh, a national level talent, Papa and Lund, who've had a huge amount of success here in the Bay Area, little old me and Ray Ratto, we did really, really well together. You had John Goulet, who went on to produce for Colin Cowherd. You had Jeremiah Crow, who went on to be the program director at KNBR before he went to go work in the podcast business in Las Vegas as well. We had Jason Barrett, who had put the whole damn station together. Dude, who the hell broke that team up? Good God. Imagine if that were still on the air. Imagine if that had stayed together. What might have frickin' been, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things broke it up. Obviously, poor management. But at the end of the day, the thing that really broke it up was this,
No doubt.
just the business. I say it all the time. I've been podcasting now for well over, I guess, close to a decade. About 9 years. And, it's not like I was on the forefront of, I saw where it was going, but being forced into it, it was clear right away. It was like, they don't have a chance. And part of it, at the time when I was working with you in like 14, 15, 16 area, there was probably only 4 or 5 years worth of cars that had the direct Bluetooth. But if you think now in 2015, which, we're almost a month away from, you have almost a decade and a half worth of cars that this thing connects to
instantly.
And that, to me, you can say people working from home, all these million things. There's still a ton of people on the road. It's this thing connecting to the car completely ruined the business. And then people that, my dad who's passed away, I remember it was such a big deal the first time that he ever heard, not that I had my own radio show, because, he lived in Davis, so he couldn't even get 95.7, but he heard me go on KNBR. It was just like, holy shit, you had made it. Or I was sitting with, Greg Papa on a Comcast show.
Your KNBR debut, you were like Haberman was doing, like filling in on Sports Phone at the time. And like you were a guest with Haberman. Was that your first KNBR appearance?
Well, no, he did the night show, I think, on 95.7 for the A's. My first radio stuff was not on KNBR, but after we got let go, I went on a couple times. Like
okay.
And just with their guys, and he heard me, and he just thought it was, it was way bigger deal than when I had my own show, just because KNBR to him was like, working with like, I don't know, like John Madden or something. It was like I had hit the big time.
Yeah, you're a New York Yankee. Congratulations.
Exactly. And I just think things, technology changed, and radio had an incredible run. It had a huge impact on my life as a consumer. As a young kid. I remember I said this the other day, talking about Tom on the podcast and the business. I remember being really, really young, maybe 10 or 11 years old. And, what's it? KHD 1140 in Sacramento. And I don't know if the Bay Area had this as well. I don't know. Did you guys have this in the Midwest? Loveline with Drew and Adam Carolla.
Oh, totally.
Was just, we didn't have the internet didn't exist. So I didn't even know what Howard Stern was until Private Parts came out. And even then, I don't think at 15 years old, I could even comprehend really Howard Stern's radio show. Cause if you didn't live back there, you couldn't listen to it. But Loveline, I just remember listening as a kid. I never wanted to go to sleep, even though I had to go to junior high the next day. It's like they were having porn stars. I was like, the radio had a huge impact on my life. And up until I was like 15 or 16, we didn't have cable TV at my house. It was just harder. People don't realize, like, not everyone, depending on where you live, cable TV, it was still kind of niche in the mid to late 90s. It was a really big deal when we finally got it. I remember I finally got fucking ESPN. And, the industry is just, for both those, has just dramatically changed really fast at exponential speeds. And now you can feel it growing even faster. The avalanche is coming down the hill. And because, Tom's a good example. And, even Tom's like 28-year run. That's pretty incredible no matter what you, like, how many years was Johnny Carson on TV? Like, that's a historic run. But like the business, if you and I run a company in the Bay, and we're not 70 years old, but we're, in our 30s, our 40s, or our 50s, we realize the shift. Why am I going to cut the same check to these? Why am I going to give them any money? So they're just not going to be able to generate any money. I mean, it's just period, point blank in a story, because that's what the business model is. That's why newspapers died, right?
Right.
They used to be a distribution for ads.
Right. Classified ads got replaced by Craigslist, and that was all she wrote. And we're looking at everything change, like you said, dramatically. The snowball is coming down the hill. It's already hit Shaggy and Scooby-Doo. It's coming for the mystery
Do you think KNBR, when I lived in Philly, and I see, sometimes Jason Barrett sends out clearly in like New York, in Philly, in Boston, radio still pretty strong. I think in Chicago, is it fair to say still pretty strong there as well?
Yes.
Obviously in the Bay Area, it's really struggling in terms of just their market share and their ability to make money. Is it around in 5 years?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. There's a part of me that thinks, everything that was ever supposed to kill radio, it still hasn't happened, and it'll find a way to exist, but it'll be at such a devalued price point that people won't care nearly as much. I mean, I wonder if the Giants are on KNBR a couple of years from now. I mean, wouldn't they be moving into 24 Willie Mays Plaza as a station and not down to Levi Stadium if they were going to have a long-term relationship still with the Giants? And if KNBR and the Giants go their separate ways, then any business model you ever thought existed has obviously been punted, and it's a whole new world once again for everyone involved. It's always great to see you, man. It's always great to catch up with you. Again, I'm a huge fan of the 3 and Out podcast. I download it every single time it comes out. And obviously I'm subscribing to your YouTube page. And John, great to see you, man. Hit him straight down the fairway. Hope that short game's coming along nicely. And if you don't mind me saying publicly, congratulations on being engaged, man. That is fantastic.
Thanks, Damon.
I'm very, very happy for you.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Damon. And keep crushing, bro. Talk to you soon.
Indeed. John Middlekauff, boys and girls, absolutely one of the best in the business. And God, I used to love Haberman and Middlekauff. I loved that show. I would listen to it all the time driving in to do my show. They were the show in front of me. And when they got let go, I was like, why would you let that show go? Early canary in the coal mine, I guess, for the radio business, but great stuff there with our good friend John Middlekauff. And let's keep going. We got an awful lot of stuff still to get into today. I guess I can take these headphones off now, though, and officially say hi. Welcome. It is great to have you here. Hit like and subscribe, please. It would be wonderful as well to see you thinking about lunch this afternoon and saying to yourself, I think I'm going to start with this guy right here. Ike's Love and Sandwiches. That rewards program wants you to sign up for it right now. Start earning your way towards free sandwiches. Our good friends at the Dubliner are open for business, and they would love to see you come on in, watch a little Thursday night football, the next Warriors game this weekend. You want to watch some college football this weekend, some NFL on Sunday. Get yourself to the Dubliner in West Portal. You will be taken care of wonderfully. It's a great bar. Really just perfect. They nailed it. Speaking of nailing it, last night, the Golden State Warriors nailed the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, the Atlanta Hawks had no real shot at that game at all. It was a 120-97 win that was never in doubt for a single minute. Wiggins led the way with 27 points for the Warriors, 23 points, 8 assists for Steph Curry. But again, that game got going in impressive fashion early on. You had a Kuminga steal lead to a Buddy Hield dunk, followed by a Kuminga steal leading to a Buddy Hield 3, and it was basically pedal to the metal right there from the first quarter on. Atlanta ran off the court. Hield, by the way, had 11 last night. He was a bench best plus 11. 9 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds for Draymond Green, who had actually been hitting like multiple threes for a good handful of games in a row. And the Warriors have like a ridiculous winning percentage. Whenever Draymond hits 3 threes in a game, he's been trying to hit 3 threes, and he had hit multiple threes like the last 5 games or so. He went 0 for 4 from downtown, so the streak is over, but he did have 2 blocks. And again, good game out of Draymond. Pajemski got his bell rung, and with his already broken nose left that game in pain. Podziemski is clearly just not himself and cannot get comfortable in his own skin, much less on the court right now, which I think is an awful lot of explaining away why he's been struggling early on so far here in the year. And all I can tell you, Brandon Podziemski, is if you are going to round yourself into shape, do it now, because there are minutes to be had and an opportunity to be won now that De'Anthony Melton is out for the year. That's the first official bad news for the Golden State Warriors. De'Anthony Melton will undergo season-ending surgery on his left knee for a partially torn ACL. And look, if you really are the deepest team, I guess the good news I have for you is that you keep on telling me you're the deepest team. So the deepest team should be able to withstand one he's not here anymore injury, as long as that guy's not Steph Curry, right? And the truth is that as impressive as Melton was rounding into shape being, it's not like you developed a codependency on the guy. He has not been around long enough to now you're so dependent on Melton. I guess if you gotta lose this young talented player, you might as well lose him early, so you get everybody up to speed with months to go to get up to speed. And I am looking at you, Moses Moody. I am looking at you, Lindy Waters III. You guys now have the biggest opportunities you're going to get put in front of you in your careers. Maybe this means Andrew Wiggins can play a little bit more of the two, and this means more minutes for Jonathan Kuminga. Again, butterfly flaps its wings in Africa, and there is a tsunami washing up on the shores of Florida. So there's a ripple effect here. There's a ripple effect, and it isn't all bad. It actually, I think, could present opportunities to take big step forwards for young men in their young careers. And again, I like De'Anthony Melton. I am not here to tell you that the season is now over because he's out. I see some people reacting like, oh, this is devastating to the Warriors. No, it's a step in the wrong direction, but devastating, it's not. We're not quite there. Not quite there. The Warriors, by the way, play again on Friday in New Orleans. So keep an eye out for that game. Got a lot going on over here. WK says, that's a hell of a butterfly. It's a big butterfly. Big wings. Big wings. By the way, just looking here through the chat, I can see that an awful lot of you really, really enjoyed John Middlekauff stopping on by. Fantastic. I'm glad you did. By the way, we will have a Club Plus tomorrow. I know you've been asking for it. You've been wanting it. You've been waiting for it. We will get into a Club Plus tomorrow to wrap up our week on a Friday. A few other things to let you know, though, about the NBA, since we were just talking about the Warriors here. LeBron is leaving social media. Probably not forever, but he needs a little time away, apparently. I think we're all going to live. But I will tell you, when you got 159 million followers on Instagram and another nearly 53 million followers on Twitter, I'm guessing that my experience with social media and his are two different things. Imagine the amount of negative attention and venom that is constantly coming at that guy. I mean, all he's done is established one of the single greatest sporting careers that you will ever see in your lifetime, but still people just live to shit on greatness. And so LeBron, with all the political hand-wringing, I guess, has said, I'm not going to blue sky. I'm just going to get off social media for a while. And all I can tell you is that anyone who has ever gone to social media to announce that they're leaving social media is usually back on social media within the next week or 10 days. So we'll see how long this lasts. As many jokes as we have, as many giggles as this might produce, let me just say, less social media for all of us sounds like a great idea. I wish I wasn't as dependent on social media to grow my career and bring attention to the fact that we're now doing shows on YouTube all the time. If I never had to tweet or twat or Facebook or anything ever again. Like, I'd be cool with it. Like, I like seeing information. I like getting information quickly, but the places that these social media sites used to be and are turning into, less sounds good. It does. It really does. So, I'm not going to begrudge LeBron any step away from social media. As a matter of fact, I dare him to keep it up as long as humanly possible. He'll probably be a happier person for it. I think we'd all be happier people for it. Have you seen that Hubie Brown is getting set to call his final NBA game this season? Hubie Brown has been with ESPN for 21 years. He has been associated with the NBA for 51 years. Hubie Brown. Story on Awful Announcing revealed that the 91-year-old Hubie Brown, who's been connected to pro basketball dating back to his first season as assistant coach with the Milwaukee Bucks before I was even born. We're going back to 1971. Hubie Brown has been connected with the NBA in some fashion, as a broadcaster, as a coach, as an ambassador. The man has lived an incredible basketball life. And for a 91-year-old, I mean, he makes Lee Corso look like he's 500 years old. Hubie's still got it. He's really still so quick. He's so good still. But I guess his time is officially coming to an end. All of our time starts coming to an end when you hit your 90s. But I don't know when that last game will be. But I'm going to go out of my way to watch it and find. I mean, I go back and watch NBA Classic hardwood games. You get young Hubie Brown and Jim Barnett working together as your analysts on some of those old NBA games. It's really something else. Those hardwood classic editions. By the way, speaking of hardwood and City Connect jersey, whatever it's called, the Warriors court last night, with the Golden Gate Bridge on it and all that stuff, like I said this on social media, you had a concept of a plan. I see what you were trying to do there, but less is more. Less is more. Like, if you're going to go for the Golden Gate Bridge spanning across your court, do you need the fog ripples or the cloud suggestions or the other? Like, the less busy your basketball court is, the better it looks as far as I'm concerned. I know not everybody shares my taste, but the world's full of people with bad taste who don't have my great taste. So that's, I guess I got to put up with all of you. One last note on the NBA. The NBA All-Star Game is so thoroughly broken that extreme measures are being taken. And honestly, as much as I don't like it, it doesn't sound like the worst idea ever. I don't know if you've seen or read anything about the suggested plan for the upcoming NBA All-Star Game, but here it is. The NBA is suggesting a new 4-team tournament-style format for the 2025 All-Star Game, and it's expected to have 2 semifinal games played up to 40 points, with the winner then advancing for a game to 25. I actually think it should be the other way around. The semifinal game should go to 25 points, and then the championship game should go to 40. The first of its kind event is expected to serve as a quick burst competition that resembles pickup games where the winner moves on to the championship round in single elimination play. Sources told ESPN last week that the NBA was in serious discussions to have 3 all-star teams of 8 players each, and the winner of the Rising Stars game take part in this all-star game tournament. Again, 4 teams would face each other in matchups. For instance, Team 1 plays Team 3 as Team 2 plays Team 4, and then the winners move on to the final round. And these are all short games to 40 to 25. Okay. I am normally one to push back against any change in the name of, like the great thing about All-Star games used to be the All-Star game is comparable throughout eras. It's always been East versus West. And then we started calling it like LeBron versus Durant, or LeBron versus Curry, or LeBron versus Giannis, and you had players picking teams? Did we actually do like an Americans versus the world format one year? They have been desperate to restart and re-energize the NBA All-Star Game for one reason: because the players no longer care. And I would say if the players no longer care, why would any fan bother caring? You can attach a little bit of money to be won. The players do not care. You can go in and, shake your fist and say, just damn it, play harder, fellas. They did not listen. Adam Silver gave everybody in the All-Star game last year the directive to hey, do me a favor, try tonight, just go out and try a little bit. And they said, sure, commish, we'll give you our best effort. That didn't even last through the national anthem. The NBA All-Star Game is so thoroughly broken that if you want to pull the jaws of life out to extract whatever you can get out of this, I guess I'm officially good with it, because the old snapping at dudes to play defense, play harder, and play with pride is apparently a lever that the NBA cannot pull with its own All-Stars. So sure, give me this 4-team, 8-player bullshit round robin sort of tournament. I don't give a shit. How are you going to fix the dunk contest? How about this? Stop asking, Mac McClung to be in your dunk contest. All due respect to Mac McClung and great dunker and athletic and blah, 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 blah. Have players that people actually know from the NBA in your NBA All-Star Game dunk contest. How about that? A little suggestion from Uncle Damon. But what do I know? I wear Dubliner t-shirts, right? A couple of other things to get here today. By the way, the sip of the day has long since passed. I'm sorry I have not officially documented that. I know a lot of you like that. So I guess if I'm documenting it here right now, means the overhit. You're all beautiful, lovely, wonderful people. Oh, look at this. Jesse Emery coming in with a nice super chat. First and only of the day. So far, says Damely. Jesse. Damon, you're easily the best interviewer in the Bay Area sports market. And if we're being honest, you're one of the best interviewers I've ever witnessed. Know what I'm saying? Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. I mean, it's pretty easy to interview your friends who you've been talking to and you've known for a long time. That's basically what we do over here. But I do appreciate that. I'm a curious guy. I'm a curious guy. I got questions. I'm a curious cat. A couple of other things before we get to today in history. Little history lesson for you. 5-star quarterback. I was actually talking about this with Middlekauff. He said, didn't Deion just land a huge recruit? And he did. His name is Julian Lewis, the number 2 recruit in the ESPN Top 300. He is a quarterback who had been committed to USC, but reopened his recruitment. And he's originally from Georgia. So, of course, Georgia tried to get back involved. Indiana got involved. He was supposed to make a visit to Indiana, but apparently he didn't visit Bloomington. But he was talking about coming to see Indiana. He is going to Boulder. He got a commitment to go to Boulder. All I'm going to say is that I wonder if Deion Sanders is even going to be in Boulder a couple of years from now, because it really does feel like his name is starting to be used in NFL conversations. And look, we all know that Deion is an opportunist. And the minute he gets an opportunity to either go make those big NFL dollars and be, in the very rare group of formerly Hall of Fame caliber players who went on to become NFL head coaches, Deion would be very interested in that. You would also think that should he be able to present him and his son as a little bit of a package deal? If you're trading, if you have the number 1 pick in the draft and Shedeur Sanders might be the number 1 pick in the draft, if you're bad enough to have the number one pick in the draft, maybe you're looking for a coach too. You can get the coach and the kid, the quarterback and the coach. I could see that happening, which means Julian Lewis, you should have gone to Bloomington, baby. Actually, the truth is, I think what Indiana's system is going to be is just looking for great quarterbacks to transfer in through that transfer portal. Look at what Curtis Rourke has done at IU. This kid was at Miami of Ohio. That's what Indiana's team is made up of. Indiana's football team is essentially made up of kids who were passed up by big-time programs, learned how to play college football at a pretty decent level, and have now come together at IU and are more than throwing punches at the big boys. And that brings us to this Saturday. Let me just, because I've been very quiet about Indiana. I'm afraid that I'm going to say the sentence that's going to jinx the season, but here they are, an unthinkable 10-0 heading to Columbus to take on the mighty Buckeyes. And there is an awful lot of hand-wringing amongst the college football, analysts and naysayers and critics, and SEC country is saying that any 2-loss SEC team is worth more than an undefeated, hasn't played anybody Indiana team. No matter what they do against Ohio State, they haven't played enough people, blah, blah, blah. Look, Indiana hasn't played anybody in terms of they have played a Big Ten schedule. So, you can only play the schedule that's in front of you. And to Indiana's credit, they didn't trail in a football game until the month of November. They have skinned everyone that they have played basically alive and have given a world that loves leaning into stats and metrics, the kind of stats and metrics that if you attach to any single college football program with a pedigree, you would say, oh, well, of course that team deserves to be in the playoffs. There are a lot of people saying that Indiana, here's the deal I'm going to make with you right now. Here's the deal I want to make with everyone who is, wringing their hands about Indiana, whether they deserve to dance or not in the first ever college football playoffs. Here's the deal. Because I'll admit, had I not gone to IU, I'm sure I might have been one of those people sort of devaluing what they've done in the name of what they have been in the past and who these other teams have always been. And, you're putting a tournament together of big boys. And I don't know if Indiana, even at 10-0, is a big boy. But, of course, I went to IU. And I've been watching these games. And I've watched enough bad football in my life to know what bad football is and know what good football is. And I'm telling you right now, I could have gone to Purdue and I would tell you, this Indiana team's for real, dude. They're not a team that has a good record because they haven't played anybody. No, they're a team that has a good record because they're a good football team. So here's the deal I would like to make with America. Because they've killed everybody. IU has just skinned their opponents alive, but now the only opponent that anyone says matters is up. I'll almost concede it. I'll concede to you that the only data point you really need to look at to determine whether or not Indiana can hang with the big boys will all be on the field in Columbus this weekend. And here's the deal I want to make with you right now. So if Indiana wins the game, the whole world can shut the fuck up and we'll see Oregon in the Big Ten title game, baby. Like a possible 1 seed for the entire college football playoffs could be Indiana's. If we beat Ohio State, that's that. Kirk Cignetti is Nick Saban plus Bear Bryant plus Amos Alonzo Stagg plus Vince Lombardi plus Don Shula all rolled up into one coaching genius. Greatest coach of all time. And I don't want any complaints or any lip from anybody on that. If Indiana goes and beats Ohio State in Columbus this weekend, holy shit. And clearly, if they do that, they're in. Let's say they go and appoint themselves in Columbus incredibly well. Let's say they play hard, but they lose. They lose a close, hard-fought game. You know what? They're still in. They're still in. And I don't want to hear it from anybody because a one-loss team that played Ohio State tough in Columbus is better in my mind than a two-loss SEC team. Because the SEC's big boys aren't that much bigger than Ohio State. Full stop. Ohio State is about as big boys gets. So if Indiana goes and really competes with the big boy and the question is answered, yes, they belong on the field. Whether they won this game or not, they belong on the field in the college football playoffs. I don't want to hear a word from anybody. They're going. If Indiana, how about if you'll agree to both, they win the game, they're clearly going. It's a close game, they're clearly going. If you'll agree to both of that, I'll give you this. If we get smoked, you can leave us out. If Indiana goes and catches like a big boy, absolute, you got your ass kicked, rolled 45-7, leave them out. Leave them out. I'm fine with it. We'll go to the fucking Pop-Tart Bowl. I'll be cool with that. Okay? If they get mollywopped by Ohio State, and it's the biggest glass of sobriety I'm going to drink of this entire football season, you can leave them out. But if they're close, they're in. And obviously, if they win, they're in. Right? Right? Like Nicole Auerbach wrote about this very well when she just said, if we want the regular season to be meaningful, then let its regular season results matter. You know, let that guide the college football playoff debate, not hypothetical Las Vegas lines or what reputations of SEC teams from the past might be. Deal with the data points from this season that you're actually in. This Saturday, we find out. By the way, if Indiana does beat Columbus, I want the entire team to be given the Heisman Trophy. This year's Heisman Trophy goes to every single kid on the Indiana Hoosiers. If Indiana beats Ohio State, I want everyone to get a Heisman Trophy. You get a Heisman, and you get a Heisman, and you get a... And I'm like Oprah. Yeah, you get a Heisman. Oh, I'm going to wake up so early on Saturday morning. I'm already nervous about this game. I haven't felt nervous about it. I've been like nervous about 3 IU football games in my entire life, and this is 2 of them. My identity, my happiness is so attached to this football team. I've never been happier on Saturdays, seriously. It's been incredible. What do I want for Christmas? I want to beat Ohio State. That's what I want for Christmas. I don't need any Christmas presents if I beat Ohio State. By the way, the internet knows that it's almost Christmas time because holy shit, am I getting bombarded with ads. You know, I was talking about the death of radio with John Middlekauff, and he's right. You know, this is an advertising business. Radio was an advertising business. It wasn't even a broadcasting business. It was an advertising business. When the advertising dollars dry up, the whole business model goes boom. The advertising that is targeting me, Facebook, the internet freaking knows me, dude. The internet knows I like big boobs. It knows that. It tries to put big boobs in front of me all the time. And for that, the internet, I thank you. I enjoy. The internet also knows that I like to cook because right now I am getting bombarded with hex-clad Gordon Ramsay cookware ads. I am bombarded with ads for knives that look like executioner blades. I mean, I'm talking like knives that look like they're like cleaver knives. I get an ad asking me if I want to have like a medieval times style kitchen knife all the time. And let me tell you, had I not had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old who are, well, 5-year-old and 3-year-old, I would say the 3-year-old is incredibly knife curious. If you leave a knife anywhere towards the edge of the counter, he'll walk into the room with a butcher knife, waving it around. It's like, holy shit, get the knife from the 3-year-old. If I didn't have a 3-year-old who was knife curious, I would already have one of those freaking knives that is the size of a laptop where you're cutting shit like this. I mean, I do like those knives. Look like the blade on a guillotine. And the internet knows that I like those knives. I've clicked on enough ads to, now that it's holiday shopping time, I'm getting bombarded with guillotine knife ads. What is new in just the last month or so, I'm being bombarded with the Wagyu beef of pork. Whatever Wagyu pork is, I'm getting ads for like incredibly high fat content pork. Maybe I've clicked on enough butcher box ads. I just want to see what the price point is. I wish you could tell the internet, like, I'm really not interested in this item as much as I'm interested in your price point that you're offering it for, because I have my own butcher shop and I want to see if your price point is much better than my butcher shop, because I love going to my butcher shop. Like, if my butcher shop is a little bit more expensive than your delivery meat box price point, I'm still going to my butcher shop because I love going into Guerra's. They treat me like Norman Cheers in there. I love going in there and talking to the butchers and the guys and cuts of meat. I love it. I love going to the butcher shop. Every man needs a great butcher, a great lawyer, a great barber, great bartender, and a great lawyer. If you're a man, you need those things. The internet. By the way, 510 Steve, you're right. High fat pork is not great to turn to after a stroke. Correct. But here's the thing. It's like, that's like nature's fat. Like, if that's the kind of fat that's not so bad, actually. Like, it's a lot better if you've had a stroke to eat a fatty pork product than it would be like a bar of chocolate. You know, that's bad. The internet knows that I like novelty socks. I don't know why, because I never buy myself novelty socks, but I got in-laws, my wife, my mom, who always buy me novelty socks every Christmas. By the way, if you just went into my underpants drawer, you would think that Christmas was a 12-month extravaganza. Because if I have, let's say I own 20 pairs of underwear, 18 of them are Christmas related. The amount of Christmas socks I have, novelty socks. The internet knows that I get novelty socks, and I'm being bombarded with ads for novelty socks and a new one today. And I guess it knows that I think that I like spending so much time in the kitchen. I'm now being offered fire blankets. Facebook is suggesting, do you want a fire blanket for when that stovetop fire begins and breaks out in your kitchen, and you can just smother it all with our new kitchen-ready fire blanket? I'm telling you, man, the internet knows. True blue forever. I freaking love novelty socks. Here's the deal. You know what? Third string all pro. I'm ready to deal with, third string all pro. I'm ready to deal with a little teasing, good natured, but you just take it too far and you're kind of a dick. So you're done. Ban user and their comments. Third string all pro. You had a chance to have a voice in this discussion. Now you just need to shut the fuck up. Go away. You're unwelcome. Chef A, Bombas are great socks. You don't have to tell me, Chef A. I'm rocking those Bombas right here, right now. And so there it is. Look out for those targeted ads. Are you ready for a little day in history? Here we go. We're wishing happy birthday, 79th birthday to Goldie Hawn. I love Goldie Hawn. Goldie Hawn, what is it? Like Old Times with Chevy Chase. Great movie from San Francisco's Chevy Chase. Goldie Hawn star in every movie era. I love Like Old Times with Charles Grodin's in that too. Great turn by Charles Grodin in that. Happy birthday to 3 Hall of Fame athletes, not just Goldie Hawn celebrating a birthday today. Michael Strahan is 53. Troy Aikman turns 58. And Ken Griffey Jr. is now a 55-year-old man. How is Ken Griffey Jr. 55? How's that even possible? How's that even possible? By the way, David Rader, foul play from 1978. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, this is it. It's the Curaboto pork or the Iberia pork from Spain. Yes, those pigs eat egg. Those are that's. Oh, you got it, Postman. Those are the pork products that I am being offered now. 510 Steve, Overboard. Really good Goldie Hawn movie. Absolutely. Goldie in a bikini. Put a rise in my Levi's when I was 11. Yeah, Goldie Hawn in a bikini on Laughing. That's where she got her start, man. Goldie Hawn. Her quick turn in the in the bath, the topless scene in oh God, what's the football movie? What's the football movie she's in? Oh, I know this. I don't even want to look. I don't even want to look. I know you're about to type it into the chat. Wildcats is the name of that movie. Thank you very much. I knew I would get it. Wildcats, topless Goldie Hawn, bathtub scene. Might have paused on that for a little while. I love the cheerleaders from Wildcats. Boogie down, shake your butt and boogie down, hey, boogie down. You ugly. What? You ugly. What? Your mama says you ugly. Hey. I mean, what, you get a Wesley Snipes? You get a young Woody Harrelson in Wildcats, right? A lot of talent on that field. Today in 1931, the horror classic Frankenstein, based on Mary Shelley's 1818 novel, was released in the United States as a movie in 1931, starring Boris Karloff, turned Boris Karloff into a household name, and it gave us one of our signature movie monster iconic, just Frankenstein. Today, 1931. One of the most recognizable characters in cinematic history, right? Speaking of Wildcats and soaking in a bathtub, today in 1981, I guess before I need to set this up in a little bit of a different way. So what is it? Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion put out WAP, Wet Ass Pussy. Like, that's the world we live in, where there are songs literally on the radio that are talking about wet ass pussy. Things have changed. Times have changed just a little. Today, back in 1981, at the time it was controversial. At the time it was very provocative, because I don't think she's really singing about working out as much as she's singing about having sex. And you really don't do that in 1981. And who would have ever thought that that pretty girl who played Sandy D in the movie Grease would be giving us something so taboo? I mean, it looks like you would be comfortable playing it for your children compared to WAP. Today in 1981, Physical by Olivia Newton-John hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was there for 10 straight weeks. The song was huge. I was 6 years old in 1981. I remember the video Physical being everywhere. I remember it being like on the nightly news. I remember it being like a little bit of a reaction to the Jane Fonda workout sensation that was happening. I remember leotards. I remember knee highs. I remember neon green headbands. Olivia Newton-John, who was, at her peak in 81. She had her fastball, Olivia did. Physical today hit the charts. What a different world we live in. Oh, WK. How did I miss this one? Saying Rocky opened in theaters today in 1976. Feels like that should have made the list too. Rocky, significant movie. True Blue says, let me see your body talk. Yeah, I think that might have been about sex. Thank you very, very much to John Middlekauff for stopping on by today. Thanks for all of you stopping on by today. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe. How many likes have we gotten on today's show? We haven't even cracked 100 likes. Come on, folks. It's free to do. Just lean forward, hit that like. Thanks to Jesse for today's super chat. Thanks to all of you for watching. Again, thanks to Middlekauff for hanging out for a little bit. And we will be hanging out. I saw that I was asked, are you going to be doing another watch party Sunday for Niners and Packers? Yes. So we'll be back here for kickoff of Niners and Packers this Sunday. Obviously, we'll have a wake up with Larry Krueger tomorrow. We'll stop by. Maybe we'll even do a little sports phone. We'll do a little Club Plus tomorrow. We'll have ourselves a fun Friday show. But in the meantime, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors. Ike's, the Dubliner. Couldn't do it without you guys. You are fantastic. You truly, truly are. And all I can tell all of you, it's how much you mean to me. Thank you so much for coming on by. And please do remember, sports don't build character. They reveal it. Let me see your body talk. And like that, he's gone.